You walk into the freezer aisle, thinking it's safe. Quick dinners, guilt-free snacks, maybe even something healthy. But for seniors, that frozen section can be a hidden danger. Behind those shiny boxes are chemicals, excess salt, and even bacteria waiting to sneak into your body. And the scariest part, the packaging makes it all look so harmless. Today we're exposing 9 frozen foods you should never eat, and revealing 2 that are surprisingly good for you. Stick around, because one easy dinner could cost you more than you ever imagined. Let's start with number 9. Frozen burritos. Sounds harmless, right? Just toss it in the microwave, and bam, dinner's ready. But the truth is, most frozen burritos are nothing more than salt bombs wrapped in rubbery tortillas. They're packed with preservatives, starch fillers, and mystery meats designed to last months in storage, not to nourish your body. Bite into one, and you're getting a bland paste of beans and beef with enough sodium to make your mouth feel like the desert. And sodium is no small issue. One frozen burrito can have half or even all of the daily salt limit for a healthy adult. For seniors or anyone with high blood pressure, that's dangerous. Salt overload makes your body hold on to water, forcing your heart to work harder. Imagine one quick meal could trigger swelling, extra medication, or even a worried call to the doctor. But it doesn't stop there. Read the ingredient label, and you'll see a list that looks more like a science experiment than dinner. Modified cornstarch, stabilizers, natural flavors, hiding MSG-like compounds, and nitrates that keep the meat looking red. These chemicals may seem harmless in small amounts, but eaten often, they raise real long-term health concerns. And here's something most people don't think about: the heating risk. Burritos are thick, and microwaves heat unevenly. The tortilla on the outside can be steaming hot, while the meat inside stays lukewarm. That's a breeding ground for bacteria, especially with poultry or mixed meats. For seniors, whose immune systems can't fight infections as strongly, that risk is even higher. So what's the better option? If you can't resist burritos, shop smart, scan the labels, look for brands with lower sodium, fewer ingredients, and clear protein sources. Or even better, make your own at home. Cook a batch, freeze them in single portions, and you control everything: the salt, the meat quality, and the flavor. That way, when you reheat, you know exactly what you're eating. Now, moving on to number 8. Frozen breaded fish fillets. The box shows a golden, crispy fillet with a fresh-caught taste, but what you actually get is mostly breading, oil, and disappointment. Under that crunchy shell is often a thin shred of low-quality fish, or worse, a processed fish paste molded into shape. And that matters, because real fish should give you omega-3s for your heart and brain. But with these frozen fillets, you're mostly eating starch and empty calories. To make it worse, manufacturers usually fry them before freezing, locking in cheap oils high in unhealthy fats. By the time you bake or fry them again at home, that healthy seafood dinner has turned into a greasy calorie trap. Here's the ugly truth about those frozen breaded fish fillets: they're not just fried once. Nope, before they even hit your freezer, they've already been fried in cheap vegetable oils loaded with omega-6 fats. Then, when you bake them in the oven, or crisp them up in an air fryer at home, you're essentially frying them a second time. That double frying creates oxidized fats, exactly the kind linked to inflammation, joint pain, and higher disease risk. And of course, the salt problem shows up again. To cover up the lack of real fish flavor, companies load these fillets with sodium and flavor enhancers. The breading isn't there to make them crispy and delicious. It's a disguise. It hides freezer burn, masks fishy smells, and stretches product weight, so you pay more for crunch and less for actual fish. Have you ever bitten into one and realized you're mostly chewing batter with barely any fish in the middle? That's no accident. It's a shell game, and you're losing every time. For seniors, this combo of processed oil and heavy sodium is dangerous. It pushes up blood pressure, stresses metabolism, and delivers almost no nutritional reward. Fresh fish offers delicate texture, real omega-3s, and clean protein. These frozen imposters, Just a greasy calorie trap in disguise. Now let's move on to number 7. Frozen meat pizzas. Comfort food, right? A little cheese, some sauce, maybe pepperoni. It feels harmless. But frozen meat pizzas are one of the worst offenders in the freezer aisle. Why? Because they're loaded with saturated fat, salt, and chemical preservatives that your body doesn't want anywhere near it. Take a closer look. That pepperoni, sausage, or bacon topping. It usually comes from processed meat mixes, pumped with fillers, binders, and preservatives like sodium nitrite. Sure, it keeps the meat red and shelf-stable, but studies have linked it to long-term health risks when eaten too often. And then there's the cheese. Cheap, heavily processed, and piled on thick. Add it all up, and a single slice can blow through your daily saturated fat budget before lunch. Calories are another hidden trap. Frozen pizzas are so calorie-dense that what looks like a snack can equal more calories than a full dinner. And let's be honest, who eats just one slice? Before you know it, half the pie is gone, and so is your daily calorie balance. For seniors or anyone managing weight and blood sugar, this is a silent sabotage. But sodium is the biggest villain here. Between the sauce, the meats, and the cheese, frozen meat pizzas often carry enough sodium to spike blood pressure after just a few bites. Combine that with saturated fat, and you've got a recipe for heart trouble. And don't forget about all the invisible engineering. To keep crusts from turning soggy, manufacturers slip in emulsifiers and binders. To keep pepperoni from shrinking, they add stabilizers. None of that is about taste. It's about making food last longer in a box, no matter what it does to your health. Think back what's worse, a pizza with pepperoni that shrinks into sad little circles, or a center so soggy it tastes like cardboard. If you've had a frozen pizza horror story, drop the brand name in the comments. You're not alone. Bottom line, one frozen pizza won't ruin your health overnight. But if you keep making it a habit, those processed meats, salty cheeses, and engineered crusts start stacking the odds against you. Choose your slice wisely. Coming up at number 6. Frozen pot pies. The comfort food classic. You picture a golden, flaky crust filled with creamy chicken or beef stew. But inside that cozy image lies a sodium bomb, sometimes packing nearly an entire day's worth of salt in just one pie. Number 6 on our list. Frozen pot pies. Just picture it. Flaky golden crust, warm gravy, tender chicken, and veggies. Sounds like pure comfort food, right? But the reality is far less cozy. What you actually get is a sodium bomb wrapped in heavy pastry, engineered not for nutrition, but for long shelf life. Here's the kicker. A single pot pie can pack anywhere from 800 to over 1,200 milligrams of sodium. That's close to half, or even a full day's worth, for many adults. For seniors or anyone with high blood pressure, one pot pie can undo an entire day of careful meal planning. And it's not just numbers on a box. This much sodium directly impacts blood pressure, fluid balance, and medication needs. In other words, that creamy gravy isn't just comforting, it's quietly working against your health. And then we have fats and calories. That buttery crust and thick starchy gravy aren't light by any means. Pot pies are designed to feel filling, but one serving can deliver the calorie load of a restaurant meal. Eat them a few times a week, and suddenly your weight and blood sugar goals become harder to manage. But the problems don't stop at nutrition. Think about the texture. These pies are dense to survive freezing, and when you try to reheat them, the crust often burns while the middle stays cold. Sometimes the vegetables turn papery, the chicken gets stringy, and the whole pie becomes a gluey mess. For older adults, especially anyone with dental or swallowing difficulties, this isn't just unpleasant. It can actually make eating harder and less safe. Take a look at the ingredient list, and you'll see more trade-offs. Modified starches, carrageenan, and hydrated proteins are added to mimic real gravy and hold everything together. These aren't deadly in small amounts, but they replace real food and hide how little actual meat is inside. You're buying engineered texture, not a freshly cooked meal. Here's the better option. If you love pot pies, make your own. Bake mini pies with lean meat, more veggies, and a lighter crust. Freeze them in portions so you can reheat without the risk, and without drowning in salt. That way you still get the comfort, but you stay in control of the nutrition. And be honest, have you ever bitten into a pot pie, only to find the center ice cold while the crust burned to a crisp? If you've cracked the reheating code, share your trick in the comments. Do you microwave first, then finish in the oven? Or do you have a hack that actually works? Because for most people, frozen pot pies are nothing more than a gamble. One pie, and your heart might be paying the price all day. Now taking the 5th spot on our countdown, frozen breakfast sandwiches. At first glance, they look like a smart start. Eggs, cheese, sausage, protein on the go. Just pop it in the microwave, and breakfast is served. But don't be fooled. These sandwiches are built for survival, not for your health. The eggs, cheese, and sausage are compressed into rubbery layers, loaded with preservatives, sodium, and fillers, designed to withstand freezing and reheating. What you taste isn't farm-fresh breakfast. It's a carefully engineered shortcut that costs your body more than it saves you in time. Now number 5, frozen breakfast sandwiches. On the surface, they look like the perfect morning solution. Eggs, sausage, cheese, all in one neat little package. Pop it in the microwave, and you're out the door. But peel back that shiny wrapper, and you'll find more problems than protein. To keep these sandwiches uniform and long-lasting, manufacturers use fillers in the meat, processed cheese that melts on cue, and stabilized egg products instead of real cracked eggs. That's why the texture feels rubbery and the flavor flat. For seniors, who often need softer textures and cleaner ingredients, that dense sausage patty and spongy egg aren't just unappetizing, they can be downright unhealthy. Let's talk numbers. One frozen breakfast sandwich can pack 700 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium, sometimes more. Add in the heavy saturated fat from sausage and cheese, and you've got a recipe for rising blood pressure, clogged arteries, and a rough start to your day. Pair it with a sugary latte or flavored coffee drink, and you've just doubled down on trouble before 9 a.m. And then there's the eggs. They aren't really eggs in the way you imagine. To survive freezing and reheating, factories whip up stabilized mixes, loaded with extra salt, thickeners, and flavor enhancers, to mimic the taste and look of fresh eggs. Eat that often enough, and over time, those additives pile up in your system, building into a long-term health pattern that's anything but good. So what's the alternative? If you love the idea of a hot breakfast sandwich, make a batch at home. Use real scrambled eggs, whole-grain English muffins, lean turkey sausage, or swap the sausage for a juicy tomato slice for moisture. Wrap them up, freeze individually, and when you reheat, use an oven or toaster oven for even heating and a better bite. Or if cooking isn't your thing, go for fresh options from a trusted deli where you can see real eggs and real ingredients, not a science experiment. Tell us what's the worst frozen breakfast sandwich you've ever had. The brand, the offense. We want to hear your horror story. Because at the end of the day, these sandwiches don't sell nutrition, they sell time. And if you're not careful, you're trading your mornings for long-term health headaches. Sliding into number 4, frozen fried chicken meals. Oh yes, the box shows golden crispy pieces with creamy mashed potatoes. But here's the truth. Those drumsticks and thighs have already been fried once before they ever reached your freezer. Factories dunk them in cheap seed oils, fry them until the coating sets, and then freeze. When you reheat them at home, whether in the oven or air fryer, you're basically frying them a second time, and that's the danger. Reheating already fried food creates oxidized fats, compounds strongly linked to inflammation and oxidative stress in the body. For seniors or anyone with heart concerns, that means extra strain that could have been avoided. And of course, sodium is back in the picture. Frozen fried chicken is usually brined, battered, and seasoned heavily with salt and enhancers before frying. The breading isn't just flour. It often contains stabilizers, anti-sogginess agents, and coloring to keep the crust looking appetizing after months in a freezer. What you're left with is not wholesome chicken, but a salt and fat delivery system wrapped in a crispy disguise. Even the reheating can betray you. Follow the box instructions, line up the pieces on a tray, and what happens? The crust darkens quickly, while the inside sometimes stays lukewarm, especially with larger cuts. Best case, you get uneven texture. Worst case, you've got underheated poultry, a risk no one wants on their plate. Because the chicken was already cooked before freezing, it's usually safe to eat, but safety isn't the same as satisfaction. What you're left with is a dense, greasy center that's hard to digest and leaves you feeling heavy. For older adults especially, that heaviness isn't just uncomfortable, it's unhealthy. If you're determined to buy frozen fried chicken, look for fully cooked versions with short ingredient lists and oils that can handle heat better. Olive oil is rare in these products, but it's worth scanning labels. A smarter swap. Grab plain frozen chicken pieces and make your own light breading at home. That way you control the oil, the salt, and the final crunch. Have you ever reheated frozen fried chicken only to discover the middle was a grease pocket of regret? Share the brand and your cooking method below. Let's expose the worst offenders together. The truth is, a box of crispy chicken costs your arteries far more than your wallet.